Sie haben also diese kurze Filmsequenz gesehen, also circa 1 Minute. Und da sieht man Menschen, die, und das ist jetzt die traurige Seite natürlich, in Bruchsal, aber nicht nur in Bruchsal, im Umkreis, in Baden, in Saarland, in der Pfalz, wurden Leute, über 6000 Juden, deportiert nach Gurs, Frankreich, Südfrankreich. Und das Mädchen, das man sehen kann, ein junges Mädchen, 13 Jahre alt, mit Hutschachtel, und ihre Mutter, Großmutter sind auch auf dieser Filmsequenz zu sehen. Sie wurden deportiert aus Bruchsal, und über diese Geschichte wollen wir heute auch ein bisschen berichten. Und es gab eine Uraufführung im Exiltheater, wo dieses Stück, diese Geschichte von Edith erzählt wird.
Der Tod bedeutet, dass ich nie mehr jemanden mit Mama ansprechen werde. Der Tod bedeutet, dass ich jetzt halbweise bin.
8.9.42, Frankfurt am Main. Liebe Tante Regine und lieber Onkel Fritz, ich habe euren Brief erhalten und habe mich sehr damit gefreut. Meinem Vater habe ich schon lange geschrieben.
Am 15. September 1942 wird das gesamte Kinderheim nach Theresienstadt deportiert. Theresienstadt ist eine Festung, gesichert mit Stacheldraht und Suchscheinwerfern. Auf die Flucht steht Erschießen.
1944 wird das KZ Theresienstadt geleert, um die brutale Überbelegung zu verschleiern. Heinz wird am 18. Mai mit Transport F nach Zielort 2008 gebracht. Das bedeutet Auschwitz.
Das Leben im Kinderheim wird zu gefährlich. Ich bekomme einen gefälschten Pass. Jetzt bin ich eine Französin aus dem Elsass. Mein Name ist Edith Leuchter.
Ja, wir dürfen heute dort übernachten.
What?
Ja, Sie haben uns eingeladen.
Übernachten? Nein, ihr übernachtet nicht bei fremden Leuten.
Sie sind nicht fremd!
Ich fliege mit Kurt und meinen Töchtern nach Deutschland. Zeige ihnen die Stadt, in der ich aufgewachsen bin. Bruchsal ist kaum wiederzuerkennen. Ausgebombt. Eilig wieder aufgebaut. Wir gehen durch die Gassen. Und ich fixiere die Leute. Schaue ihnen in die Augen. Aber man sieht ihnen nicht an, was sie getan haben.
Und wir werden jetzt ein bisschen mit den Damen hier darüber sprechen. So we're going to talk a little bit about your mother, who's on this film sequence. And so yeah, maybe why don't we just start off telling what you've already experienced here, and the play, the emotions, which of course are very high. Tell us a little bit. Who wants to start?
Okay, I'll start.
Go ahead, Julie.
Well, we were approached, as you know, a few years ago, after we were here for the Stolperstein ceremony in 2017. I'd say it was like a year later, a little more than that, I think. We were approached by Lisa Sommerfeld and Petra regarding, they had seen the film, and they said, who's the girl with the Hutschachtel, you know? And it came about then, of course, through Rolf and everybody. Florian, we were all introduced. And to make it short, we connected, and they said they want to make a play about this girl. And so we spoke with our parents, and anyway, we gave our permission. And then now here we are. It was supposed to happen a few times already before this, but they had to cancel it because of COVID. So now we were able to see the play in person, and it was totally amazing. Never really what I imagined it would be. Didn't really know what to expect, actually. And it really was just really something very special and beautifully done. And I understood most of it in German, so that was good.
Very good.
And I really thought that the actors were just wonderful.
Yes.
And of course, Lisa and Petra did an amazing job as well. And it was very moving and also meaningful. And just, I was really thrilled that they even thought to do something like this for our family.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, what would you maybe like to add or say to the film, to the whole story? Go ahead, Debbie.
This whole experience has been overwhelming, to say the least. It's very difficult to put into words how we feel. The play was powerful and poignant and touching, and I really think it presented our mother's story very well. Lisa, the playwright, was quite creative, and she used some metaphors. She even used a drawing of our Uncle Heinz, who was murdered in Auschwitz. He did a paper cutout of a moon, and she used the moon in several different ways during the play. She also included the fact that our father actually worked on the Apollo mission, which obviously went to the moon, so she connected that. And I think she did an incredible job along with Petra, and we are very grateful to everyone in Bruchsal who has been involved.
Yes, and there have been a few people involved, as we know, and well, maybe you can also mention the first connections. I know there are a few names here.
Sure. Well, the first connection was Ronit Shimoni. She's from Israel. She moved here with her husband to Germany, also Israeli. And he, sometimes I get this a little not quite right, but he had a colleague who had a relative who was in the same children's home and orphanage in Frankfurt as our Uncle Heinz.
Okay.
And Ronit helped this woman figure out what happened to her family. But then she was very curious and she wanted to know, well, did anybody else survive from this children's home? And she found Heinz's name, and obviously he did not survive. But she connected to the librarian in Bruchsal.
Wow.
And they started talking, and he said, well, the sister, Edith Leuchter, she survived. So Ronit found our parents in Florida, which is where they live.
Okay.
And she called our parents, and I believe the first few times my father hung up on her because he didn't know who she was. Plus he doesn't hear that well.
Okay.
But then they connected, and I know that Ronit and Rolf and the town were instrumental in planning the Stolpersteine ceremony. So that was in 2017.
So who was here in
2 or 3?
2017? Were
So
Julie, our dad,
and I, and 2 of our children.
Yeah.
Oh,
my
Two of our
daughter
other children.
Amanda and her son Nathan were here, and also our husbands were here.
And our husbands.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we came in 2017 along with 4 or 5 other families. One of the other families is local to Bruchsal, and Bruchsal told them that their great uncle, who was disabled, was murdered by the Nazis, and his Stolperstein was installed the same day as our 5 Stolperstein, which were for...
And he was not Jewish also.
Not Jewish, correct.
Right.
So the Stolperstein are for Edith, our mother, our grandmother Julia, our grandfather Max, who got out in July of '38 before Kristallnacht.
Right.
And Mathilde Weil, our great-grandmother.
Yes.
So 4 Stolperstein are at Friedrichstrasse 53, which used to be 55. And then Mathilde Weil, our great-grandmother Stolperstein, is at Hutschachtel 26.
Okay. Maybe if I can just for a second interrupt, because we'll show the spectators also pictures now of, they're going to blend in some pictures of also where your mother lived.
Yes.
And there was a tour of Bruchsal to different stations, and the firehouse, which today the firehouse, which was the synagogue in Bruchsal. And I know you told me and the others, I was with you. So tell us, how far away did your mother live, and could she see the synagogue from her Her apartment?
Well, yeah, actually, the house is literally across the street from where the synagogue was, which is now, was the firehouse, now it's not anything. You could see it directly from there. If you were up in a window on the second floor, you could definitely see what was happening, and unfortunately she did.
So when we were growing up, that part of her story says she was awakened in the middle of the night, she heard glass breaking, she heard she could see flames outside her window, and she crawled into bed with her mother, but she never said she saw flames coming from the synagogue. And today it was extremely obvious to us she must have seen the synagogue burning. So maybe she repressed that.
Yes,
might be, but you couldn't really avoid seeing it because it was literally right there. So
So how was it growing up in New York, you know, as a teenager, hear your parents? I mean, I know, you know, Jewish parents can also be strict, but they can also, I mean, they're loving. They're definitely loving. So how was it also as a child, not only what stories did you get from home, or when did you find out even where and what Bruchsal was, and how tell us there something.
Our parents have been speaking to us since we were very little. In first grade, we were talking about grandparents, and I said 3 of my grandparents were murdered in Auschwitz, and the girl next to me said, "You're Jewish?" and she called me a dirty Jew. They always shared them in little pieces, never in chronological order. But both of them spoke and told us basically their entire story. And they were very overprotective, understandably so. I think my father, not literally, but I think my father thought there was a Nazi around every corner, meaning he was just afraid and wanted to protect us, and was afraid to lose us because he lost everything during the war.
And just that the spectators or the people out there know your father, just a little bit his background. Tell us a little bit. Julie, your father. Your father.
Well, our father was born in Vienna, Austria, and grew up. Actually, not grew up, but when he was young, had a pretty privileged life. Our grandparents had a lot of money. They had a silk business in Vienna. They did very well. And he was an only child, so he was very doted on, spoiled, extremely spoiled. And our grandfather was about 45 years old when he was born. So he was much older, and our grandmother was in charge. She ruled the roost. So anyway, he was a character, and he was always getting into trouble and things, and did some things our grandmother didn't find out about, but anyway.
We don't want to talk about that today.
Julie said yesterday everything was good until it wasn't.
Until it wasn't. So he had a pretty nice life. And then, unfortunately, you know, Hitler came into power, and things changed dramatically overnight in Austria. And they had to leave. They end up in Belgium. And then, anyway, our father was in the French underground, actually, during the war also. He was in the French resistance called the Maquis. And eventually, to make it short, he ended up in a children's home in France, which is where he met our mother. And then they lost each other and reunited again in the United States.
That part, we'll get into that later. Because
but
that's
anyway,
a super part.
Now, because of, and I don't excuse how he was a lot of the time, but because of the life that he had, or not life he didn't have, a lot of it, you know, both our parents didn't really, to be parents of your own children is difficult, because you don't really know what to do. There was nobody there to show you, you know, how to be a parent, really. So when we were growing up, you know, our father was extremely strict, like over the top, you know, and that was a challenge. Our mom was definitely not, she was but he was in charge. He ruled the roost, and much like our grandmother, but he did. So it was, you know, difficult, but also it was like, it's very different when you are the child of Holocaust survivors growing up as opposed to just a regular kid, because, you know, like she was saying, it was like, first of all, we had passports from when we were very young, because there was always like, in case we have to run, in case we have to leave the country, we have to go, you know, you know. And then also I remember distinctly, because I'm a little bit older, but I remember distinctly when our dad, and like she said, Debbie said they told things in different bits and pieces, but he told us about the time he was in the French underground and when he was living in the woods for 2 years, carrying a rifle, and he was about 14 years old. And of course, what are you going to do? You got to survive, right? You know, so they would capture German soldiers, and you know, they would make them take off their clothes, and they want to see if they had the SS tattoo here. And if they didn't, they gave them back the clothes and they let them go. And because they were like regular German army, and they were just people that were drafted, you know. And if they were SS, they would shoot them on the spot. And so my father said that, you know, even though they deserved to die, you killed another human being. So you shot someone. You have to live with that the rest of your life.
He doesn't like to talk about.
He doesn't like to talk about it. But also, he also made me, me, swear that I would never tell anybody. I mean, years ago. Now he doesn't care. Years ago, because he thought maybe somebody's going to come and arrest him. You know, they're going to come and take him.
That trauma that always exists.
So, and I said, are you kidding? I wish you would have done more, you know? But he didn't view it that way. So for a long time, I think there was that fear of, you know, somebody's going to come after him or something. But then, you know,
Julie mentioned the passports. So, you know, ever since we were little, he would tell us, make sure you have your, always when you grow up, make sure you have your passports ready to go to Israel. And he always said it could happen again. And so I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which was the city where the most horrible anti-Semitic attack took place at the Tree of Life Synagogue. And shortly after that happened, Julie actually, well, I speak as well, but she spoke at a vigil in Brooklyn, and she said, our father said, we should always have our passports, and her response to our father would be to say, Dad, this is the United States. This would never happen here. However, we don't feel so good about the current political situation in America right now.
And Debbie, how at home, I mean, like, I know I saw the play and the story came out that your mother, her best friend Maria, I think was her name, that they played, and then all of a sudden, from one day to the other, she was not allowed to play with your mother, knowing she's Jewish. And did your mother tell you these stories, or where did you hear stories in that direction, you know, or with Heinz, you know, that they all of a sudden weren't allowed to do this or go here? Or
she did share some of it. I think also Lisa did a lot of research, and Petra as well. Mom isn't very expressive with her words. I think she repressed a lot. When I asked her, how did you feel the last time you said goodbye to your mother? And she says, sad. So it's very, very difficult for her. She did write a diary, and a lot of the play is based on her diary as well.
And I know, well, two sisters, you're both involved, you're survivors, children of survivors, and now I think you are also more involved in also different organizations, or where you give talks, or you tell us a little bit about that.
I'm a volunteer at the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh for 25 years, and I'm part of a Generation Speakers series, and sometimes along with the Holocaust Center I speak at schools or libraries, but I also seek out speaking engagements. So I've spoken to universities. A week from Monday, I'll be speaking in a local library, and that will be the first time after the play, and it will be a completely different experience that evening. So I have a PowerPoint, and I share both of their stories with slides with photographs and documents.
Right.
And afterwards, the best part is that Mom and Dad join us for a question and answer session.
Oh, wow. Great. Hey, well, nowadays with the media, you can do all kinds of keen stuff. And this what took place here now. You're definitely going to bring that into your project, I'm sure.
Yes.
And what about your children? I mean, you said so you have 2 sons and you have 2 daughters, correct? So how involved?
I have 2 sons and 1 stepson, and the stepson is who came with us on the trip.
Okay.
I don't think they tell me. I do think that they share it, but I don't always know about it. I hope to turn my presentation over to them one day so that they can carry the torch.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. How about you?
I know my daughters have shared with others, you know. So our older daughter is really, she's an atheist. She's not religious in any way, and her husband neither. But she's very Jewish in her heart.
Yes.
And she definitely fights for causes. She's very much a liberal-minded person. She fights for, you know, the Black Lives Matter, you know, for the abortion rights, and for, you know, anything against anti-Semitism, anything that's really going in the wrong way. She really tries to make it right, you know, and they do a lot of fundraising and stuff like that. So she's really wonderful that way, and my son-in-law too. And our younger daughter is actually Orthodox. She's very religious.
Okay.
I don't know how that happened. But, and so she also does, you know, communicates to the people in her Jewish community a lot of what her grandparents
And she
went
also
through.
created a video
and
called Love
yeah,
Found.
she created a video called Love Found, which was interesting because through that video,
some people found us.
Some people found us.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
make a note of that.
It's a short, just a couple
Yeah.
of minutes long. It's-
Yeah.
I know we don't know each other that long yet, but I have the feeling we know each other years already.
Right.
Yeah.
Just
We're not
from
related,
here.
right? But we know each other, right?
Yeah.
And I do know
Landsman.
Yes. Yeah.
we wrote a few emails beforehand just to say, oh, I'm looking forward to meeting you. And, and one of the questions was, well, what are you doing here, Bernard? Why are you living here? You know, and I said, well, we'll talk about that too, you know, but I do know that, my father, who's also survivor of the Holocaust, you know, Bernard Zimmerman, the question when he went to schools to talk about his story, and also when I talk to young children about what happened, the question is, ja, Herr Zimmermann, wie konnten Sie nach allem, was Sie erlebt haben und durchgemacht haben, wie konnten Sie zurück nach Deutschland kommen und hier leben? How could you come back to Germany after everything you experienced? And I know what his answer was, and I know what my answer is that, well, to show the Nazis, to show Hitler, they didn't succeed in wiping out and the whole Jewish people, and that we're here, and that luckily we're here, you know, I mean, talking about cultural aspect. And so what would you say, I mean, if somebody asked the question, now here you're here, you know, everything you're experiencing, we're in 2022, this is another Germany.
Yes, I know Julie feels the same way as me. I have nothing against this next generation.
No.
They had nothing to do with what happened. Even if they're children of Nazis, they have no responsibility. I have noticed that some people feel a responsibility, and I really respect that. And I also feel that Germany may have done a lot more to make reparations, and I don't mean monetarily, than some other countries. My father always says that the Austrians are worse anti-Semitics than the Germans.
Yeah, there are other countries, and I must experience.
I don't know if that's true.
Yes, and I do know out of own experience, and you've witnessed this as well, that there are so many dedicated people who are now, you know, teachers, and you know, Rolf and Florian.
Yes, we met some today.
Met some today also.
And there are people walking there. You asked me the question, who are these people? I don't. You didn't even know who they were, but they were there.
But they were there,
concerned, and moved and touched, and yeah, that's something I also find very good to know, that in today's Germany, luckily, there are other people.
But they care much more than I would have expected them to.
Yes, I think we were totally surprised, happily surprised, and really touched by that. Actually, you know, people like Rolf Schmidt. I mean, he's just unbelievable,
an incredible
human being, and Florian also. Florian Jung is an unbelievable human being. You know, and Reimer. You know, like these people, it's like you wouldn't expect somebody who's non-Jewish to go to this extent, to do. Why? Why should you do that? You're not required to. You don't have an obligation really at all. But they're doing, they feel what's the right thing to do, you know? And so I think it's really moving, and just, it's amazing. And I hope they can bring it to more people. That more people will do what they, because once they're not here anymore, there has to be another generation, younger people that are going to do it also. To
further the
for humanity's sake,
for sure.
You know,
that's definitely. I mean, I see it the same way. I mean, in German, there's a word which I really like, which fits here, is Begegnungen. Begegnung is like encounter. You know, to encounter special people. And yeah, you make so many encounters of people who are really, they're not Jewish like you said, but they're so involved and dedicated, which is nice. I mean, it would have been nice a few years back that there would have been more civil courage. But there were, have you heard stories also from your parents, people who did at that time help and hide people?
We have examples of actually. Can I tell, or do you want to tell us?
Mademoiselle Burel, or who?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was gonna. In the correction home.
So Dad was in a correction home in Je-les-Bois.
Well, not that he should have been. Well, he maybe should have been in a correction home.
He was hidden.
He was hidden.
Thank you.
Although
he was hidden.
Although he could have.
So he's hidden in this correction home in Je-les-Bois, and Mademoiselle Burel was the director.
Okay, that sounds very French.
She knew the mayor of the town in Je-les-Bois, France.
Okay.
And they got Dad false papers, and his false name was Claude Lambert.
Right.
He tells us, you know, at the time he was a teenager and she was an old lady. Meanwhile, she was in her 50s, which is quite funny. And
well, to him, she was old.
And Edith's false name was Edith Labé. And the interesting thing about both of their false identities, excuse me, but about their false identities, that they were both supposedly from Alsace-Lorraine.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because German and French, and obviously they spoke both.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, but go ahead.
No, I was going to continue a little bit the story.
Yes.
So the woman that hid our dad, she was a French Catholic woman and a wonderful person. And what she did was, so when he was in this home, everything was fine for a while. And then when the SS would come, which they would come frequently to the door, and she could sweet talk them, my father said, and you know, and she would hide him in a closet in the basement. And then after a while, it got hot because somebody squealed that there was a Jew there. And she approached him and said, I have to place you somewhere, you have to get out because somebody's they're gonna take you. So she's placed him in the Maquis in the French underground. And that's where he went after that, because he couldn't stay there anymore, you know? So now, after the war, he tries desperately to find her. She saved his life. He wants to thank her. But her name apparently was like Mary Smith here in New York. You know, it's like a common name. And there was no, I don't even know if there was a phone book then, but there was no internet, there was no Facebook, there was nothing. So how do you find somebody, you know? He didn't know if she lived, if she died, he didn't really know what happened to her, and he never found her. And he really felt very badly that he really wanted to find her to thank her for saving his life. But unfortunately, couldn't.
Yeah, yeah, because we're talking about civil courage, and at that time, I know also from my father's story, there were people who definitely helped them going over the border or whatever it was. So there were also good people, if you want to call it like that.
Yeah.
But I do want to get back to the story of your mother meeting your father the first time was in Alsace, right? At this
no, Magelier.
Magelier.
Oh, Magelier.
Magelier, it's
Yeah.
a castle that still exists today,
Exactly.
and they actually renovated it. It's some kind of
Chateau Magelier.
event venue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's where the first contact was with Kurt, with
and,
your
and he
father.
really liked her.
Okay.
But she didn't like him because he thought he was a big shot. And they were not together. Mom was in Magelier much longer than Dad, although Dad left and came back briefly, but she was there a lot longer. And then they had no clue what happened to each other. And then in January of 1947, Mom was outside the museum. No, excuse me. My father was outside the Museum of Modern Art with some friends trying to decide where to go next. And all of a sudden, my mother taps him on the shoulder because she recognized him and says, "Kurt." And he immediately asked for her phone number.
Give me your phone number.
Give me your phone number. Wow. So
Yeah, it was crazy.
So
really.
So I would like to point out that the play really sticks to
definitely.
our story.
Yeah, that was great. And then so this was 1947.
Yeah.
47.
So real quick. So when did they finally get the papers, visum to immigrate to the United States?
Mom came in April of 46.
Okay.
Because of her father.
Her father was in New York, but she went to live with an aunt and uncle in the Bronx, actually.
Okay.
And our dad came in September of 46.
All right.
And he was on the French troop ship called the Athos II, and took care of about 70 other orphans on the way.
Wow. Okay, so then they met in front of the
few months later. MoMA, yes.
Modern Museum of the Museum of Modern Art. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And then so he wasn't a show off anymore. He wasn't as arrogant as.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I don't know, but you know what it was.
She must have seen something.
Well, I think what it was also was all of us. You're in New York City amongst millions of people, and all of a sudden you see a familiar face, someone you knew. Maybe you didn't love them or like them.
That's a good point.
She used to refer to him as an eingebildete Fratz. That's what she used to call him.
Also, sie kann auch Deutsch.
So she used to call him that, like a conceited, And anyway, you're seeing this person now that it's a familiarity, So she felt compelled, I guess, to go over to him then and say, here I am, and he said, give me your phone number.
Yeah, but I'm sure it's possible that we show a few pictures here of, I know there's that wedding picture, which they also showed in the play, right? Where they're looking at each other, and the next picture is where they're kissing each other. Maybe we'll be able to also show this for the people watching here, this program. But and then they got married 1950 in
August 13th.
August. I know that, 13th, right?
Which is also my oldest son's birthday.
Yeah.
Oh wow!
So he was born on their 40th.
On their 40th wedding anniversary.
Okay. So I know my father, when he immigrated to the United States, to New York after everything, that was in 49. For him, the sentence was a new life, freedom, New York, the United States. That was what it represented. Was this for your parents similar?
Oh, definitely. I think a great example of that is he still has the first silver certificate dollar. Really? That he earned as a shipping clerk.
Okay. Yep, he has the first dollar. Yes. And I'll tell you something, they came here and the first thing, right away, to take a job, right away. Well, our dad had an apprenticeship in Europe, so that we came here, had like a trade that he knew, making leather handbags, learned to make jewelry. Anyway, but that was, I forget what he did first. He did...
no, he worked his job was making leather handbags, but he attended an technical school.
An technical school, right. But the first thing, my parents right away, they learned English, like almost immediately. That was like a given, you really they wanted to also.
So they spoke German and French.
Yes, that fluently.
So the English was zero at the time?
Zero. When they first came here, nothing.
Just a few words.
Nothing when they came here.
Somebody, maybe a nanny. I think a little bit.
Okay,
Hardly anything.
But hardly anything. So they.
But I want to add
nothing.
though that when they first came here, people didn't want to know, and if they didn't want to know what happened to them, but that was the time,
Okay. Oh,
kind of
okay.
like here, and they also. I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, actually, I was going to, I'll say that maybe that was what you were going to say. So our mom went to live with an aunt and uncle in the Bronx, and they were very comfortable. They got out early, and they had no children. And then somebody that they knew, they introduced our mom to her, some lady, and they told this woman what happened to their niece, you know? And the woman, who was Jewish, said, well, you don't look so bad.
See, now it's interesting. So we each remember different things.
Yeah, well, this I was told from my mother.
yes.
Yeah,
you don't look so
nice.
bad. Like, what?
What kind of comment is that? Yeah.
And it was from a
Absolutely.
Jewish woman.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, why would you even say something like that?
I know
you
I was going to
so
say.
A lot of odd things like
They
that.
either didn't want to hear it or they didn't believe them, is what my mom
Okay.
said. My mom
Yeah.
says that often in the Q&A session that we have.
Okay. And I have to, sorry to bring this in all the time, but as we know, there's so many similarities that in our families, and like my father, because here you mentioned, he worked in the handbag factory. My father worked in the handbag factory in New York. He became American citizen first of all, then was drafted in the army, and Korea.
Right.
I know Kurt was in Korea, right?
Yes.
And also just the story before that, my father with his brother and sister first from Cologne went to Antwerpen, where they stayed, you know, as refugees.
Right.
Kurt, your
Yes,
father
he was in
I was in
Antwerp.
Antwerp for,
Antwerp.
I think, 18 months.
Yeah.
Okay, and then from there, when Germany invaded, you know, the Benelux countries, they had to flee to France, Vichy France, southern France, and towns, little towns, and the crazy thing is also, I mean, if we're talking about the German efficiency at the time, you know, and I think I heard you, Julie, saying before how when you think these educated people, you know, who made these decisions, you know, and I know my father told me stories that they would go with buses to the littlest villages in the mountains because they knew there was one Jewish family living there to still deport them to Auschwitz. Yeah, so, but okay.
Well, I just want to point out that one other very interesting coincidence, which I didn't think about until recently. So, Mom worked at the Empire State Building in New York for a haberdashery, which is a hat manufacturer.
Oh, wow.
And the name of the play is
Yes, of
Girl
course.
with a Hat Box.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
Isn't that
crazy.
wild?
Yeah, that's I didn't.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah.
She worked. That's
But
her first job.
so your parents living in Florida, they're obviously going to see. I think it was recorded.
Yes,
the
it was
play, so they
recorded
will
for them.
be able
Yeah.
to see it and also understand the language.
Right.
Not going to be a problem. And so you'll be here still what, a few days? How long are you going to still be in Germany or in Europe?
Well, my husband and I will be here till Tuesday. We're going to Frankfurt later today, and then we'll bop around and see what we can do. And they're going.
And we'll be in Germany until Tuesday as well. We're going to Stauffenberg and then to Köln.
Oh, Köln. Why Köln?
Because I want to drink some Kölsch.
Habt ihr das gehört? Sie will Kölsch trinken.
And then back to Amsterdam, which is where we started our trip.
Okay, you started, yeah. Okay, so obviously you're taking back so many impressions, and you got to first probably digest maybe in the flight home, and it's going to take a few weeks. But could you say what mainly, you know, this trip for you, what did it represent, or what are your feelings, if you could just spontaneously put it together?
Well, you can't do it in a few words only, you know.
I know.
So, I already had a wonderful feeling in 2017. I would say this just cemented it Is that
Good
a
word, cemented.
That's what I was thinking.
Zementiert.
Ah, great minds think alike. I would say it just cemented my feelings from 2017.
Okay.
My husband too.
Okay.
My husband said originally when we were coming in 2017, he sort of had his guard up because he really wasn't sure how people will be reacting when we had the Stolperstein ceremony and we were standing in the street. He was thinking that people are going to walk by and maybe make comments or something, but it was to the contrary. And he got a wonderful feeling. He was really happy we came. Now, I think it's even more so because we met more wonderful people.
Yeah.
And then there was now beyond Stolperstein was the play.
Yeah.
You know, and now the interviews and all these other things. It's like a really full circle experience. And, you know, very, very meaningful.
Definitely, definitely.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I would say it was a pivoting life experience for me. My heart is full, and a lot of gratitude for all the people and what they've done, what they're doing, and what some of them will still do.
Yes.
And I'll say that my mother's last name is Loeb, which means strong lion, and my father's last name is Leuchter, which means candelabra, and I hope that that the future is brighter and stronger.
I don't know how to end this with a better finishing, and yet I have also a little surprise that I think we together, the three of us, will definitely do here. And what I think we want to do is definitely light a candle for who do we want to light it for? For those who didn't have the privilege, the luck to survive, to live a happy, long life. And here I have some matches and this little present here, which I put together for the two of you.
Oh, wow.
So we're gonna, and this you will give your parents.
Oh, of course.
This is your picture of your parents. So, so why don't we stand up here?
Oh,
and
John Lennon.
And John Lennon here on the back.
That was really nice in the play. Yeah.
Yeah. There was also the Beatles and Paul McCartney.
Yes, I noticed that.
And so why don't we for all those from your grandmother Heinz and all those people who didn't have the luck to be here with us, let's light a candle.
And for all that they could have been.
Really, definitely. And to never forget. To never forget. Niemals vergessen.
Never again.
Yes.
Never again.
Yeah.